this fellowship and all of our guests that are present this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm going to be very, very brief and allow Dr. Vinson to really share about herself and particularly her work in uncovering and bringing to light the development of the Memorial Institute or Smallwood Institute in Claremont, Virginia. A long time ago when I was a kid, I was privy to some conversations with my father's siblings about my grandmother attending college, and I had never heard this conversation before, and so they were unsure if it was at the Virginia Normal and Industrial Institute or if it was at Smallwood indeed. And so one of the things that I hope to do out of this is maybe at some point uncover some records of students on campus at Smallwood Institute. I met Dr. Vinson when Dr. Vinson, I guess, began this work. I was working with the Surrey County Historical Society, and she came to Surrey, and I am the quote-unquote tour guide for Surrey. And I gave her the dollar tour, and that's the big tour. And I hope that was helpful in the request. And we actually, I think we drove within sight of the grounds of the original Smallwood Institute. The other thing that you might do if you have an interest in studying about Smallwood, the 1920, 1910 census, I know, actually lists for Guilford District in Surrey County, Virginia, might list those students who are residents on the property at that time. And I had invited a gentleman today whose mother was a student in 1920. It shows up in the 1920 census. Her name at that time was Vesey Haskett. Vesey Haskett later married Floyd Gilchrist, and many of you know Douglas Gilchrist, and Douglas's mother would have been the student at the Smallwood Institute. Dr. Vinson is going to come and talk to us about this. But in her work, the biggest revelation for me was, and maybe I shouldn't say it, maybe I should let her say it. But the biggest revelation for me was the connection that she made between John Jefferson Smallwood and Nat Turner. And for those of you who did not know, when the Union Army, the federal troops were brought in to look for Nat Turner in 1831, if I'm not mistaken, they left Norfolk, they came to Wharf Hill, got off boats at Wharf Hill, and walked what is now Main Street, 258, all the way into Southampton County, Virginia. So those soldiers would have at least seen that magnolia tree that's in the yard right over here. I don't know if anything else was constructed by that time, but I think that magnolia tree would have been in the yard. All right, without any further ado, we're going to have Dr. Vinson, who is going to give us this incredible story. And incidentally, I saw some of her books in the back too, so make sure you get a copy of this book.
Okay.
Thank you, Reverend Harrison, and thanks for everyone coming out today. It's always a pleasure to come and speak about Dr. Smallwood. I was here in Smithfield about 5 years ago, and as Reverend Harrison said, I stayed in Surrey County. It was like my second home. But before I talk today to you about, well, first I want to tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Elaine Vinson, but my pen name is Mary E.C. Tripp, and that's what you'll find on my books. Someone asked me this morning when I came in, and she said, "Okay, you're Dr. Vinson. Well, where is Mary E.C. Tripp?" And I am Mary E.C. Tripp as well. And the reason why I gave her a pen name, Mary E.C. Tripp, because It's in honor of my mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, because they were all named Mary Eliza. And at the end, you'll see how I came about naming Mary Eliza and the reason why. But before I start talking about it, I told Reverend Person, I like to be very informal. You know, this is like a barrier, so I may walk around a little bit because I want to tell a story. And before I came to know Dr. Smallwood, I only knew him as Uncle John. I was about 7 or 8 years old, and I grew up in a little place near Ridge Square, North Carolina, Northampton County. And my grandfather was born in 1897. So every Sunday, we went to Grandma and Granddad's house. It was, you know, a ritual. Every Sunday, you had to go to Grandma and Granddad's house. And I guess of all my siblings, it's 8 of us, and all of their grandchildren, I think we have a total of 65 grandchildren. Granddaddy used to always say, when I would come, he would say, let me get my pipe, because Elaine's coming, and I know she's going to ask me a zillion questions. And every time, every question I asked, he seemed to really enjoy me asking questions. Well, one Sunday we were there, and Granddaddy talked about an uncle of his who started a school somewhere in Near Richmond for colored people. So, as inquisitive as I was, I asked him over and over again. I still asked him, I said, where's the school? He said, somewhere near Richmond. He said, somewhere near Richmond, Virginia. And I said, where did he go to school? And Granddaddy told me he went to school up north, to a white school. Well, at that time, it was around 1967, and we didn't immigrate until 68, so I could not understand how his uncle could go to an all-white school, because there I was attending an all-black school, and we had not immigrated. So I asked him a lot of questions about his Uncle John. Granddaddy didn't know much. So at that time, I decided I would sketch in my mind that one day, I made a mental note, that one day, when I got older, I would find out about his Uncle John. So Granddaddy also told me about a sister of his. His sister, who he would always refer to she, Willie, Uncle Willie said, she said, and I was kind of confused. I said, well, Willie is a boy's name, so why is he calling her a she? Well, Willie's a boy's name. So I just couldn't get it. So then I asked Granddaddy questions about his grandmother, who was born 1820. Well, first I asked him questions about his mother. And at that time, we did not have a picture of her. And Granddaddy told me that, you know, he described his mother to me. And I asked him, well, what about your grandmother? And he said, well, she died in 1904. I was 7 years old when she died. He said, but she looked like my mother. So I say all of this because we're going to come back around to this. And for young people in here, if you have grandparents, make sure you ask your grandparents questions. If you're interested in knowing about your history, because your grandparents know a lot. They have a lot of wisdom. So never think from 1 minute, like I was thinking with Granddaddy. Granddaddy's sitting down. He doesn't know. He doesn't know anything. He doesn't know what school was. He doesn't know either. But he knew enough to get me started. So as life goes on, as I said, I was about 10 years old. As life goes on, you go through high school, and I think that when I go back to the day that Granddaddy told me about somewhere near Richmond, I grew up on a small little road. And, you know, we would only go to school and come back home, go to school and come back home. And my biggest obstacle at that time, I felt, would be, how in the world am I going to get to Richmond? I had no idea where Richmond, Virginia was. But I said, well, you know, I'll put that on the back burner and I'll wait on that. So as life goes on, you finish high school, you go to college, you get out of college, you want to go back to graduate school, you want to go get your PhD, and you get a job, and you know how life unfolds. And it was in 2005. I sort of settled down now. Well, for the most part, I settled down. I'm working as a psychologist with the school system. And you know, everything's kind of quiet in my life. So one day I had come in from walking. I called my mom, who still was living, I'm living in Raleigh now. And my mom Northampton County. So I called my mom, and she tells me, she said, today is my aunt's birthday. And I said, who's your aunt? She said, Aunt Willie. So then that remote Aunt Willie. I said, oh, so it was a person named Aunt Willie. Now, I had never met Aunt Willie. And I said, well, how old is she? She said she's 105 today. And I'm like, 105? So I said, well, let me call her. So I said, Mom, give me her telephone number. I called her in Philadelphia. She was living in Philadelphia. So I called Aunt Willie. Of course, she did not know me. So when I told her I was your brother's granddaughter, of course she knew her brother. And so we talked briefly, and then she told me, she said, I want you to do me a favor. I need you to come to Philadelphia. And I'm like, come to Philadelphia? And she's like, yeah, I need you to come to Philadelphia. So I said, okay. She said, I want you to do something for me. And I said, okay. So that was September of 2005. So I told my sisters about it, and I said, well, maybe this spring I'll go up there. You know, it's September, it's getting cold. I said, I don't feel like going on the train in the winter, you know, it's cold. And my sister, she said, do you realize she is 105, right? You said you'll wait until the spring. So I said, okay. So I took that train to go to Philadelphia to meet with Aunt Willie. So when I saw Aunt Willie, she told me a story about how one night God came into her room, and he stood at the foot of her bed. And she said, I was already packed. You know what she meant. She said, I was already packed, ready to go. And she said, you know, but when he stood in front of my bed, nothing was going on. I couldn't feel anything move in my body. So she said, she asked God, she said, I was disappointed. And she said, I asked God, why are you keeping me here so long? I'm 105. I'm ready to go home. And she said, God just shook his head. So she said, when she got the phone call from me, she said, I know now that's why God was keeping me here, to tell this story about Uncle John. And then I said, okay, that's that name that Granddaddy told me about when I was 10. Wow. So she asked me, she said, will you do the research and write a story, find out about what happened to my Uncle John? She said when 1912, September 29th, it was her birthday. She had just turned 12 years old. She was born 1900. I had just turned 12 years old. And a man came on a horse and wagon, and she and her mom were out in the field working. Her mom was Dr. Smallwood's sister. And she said they were out in the field picking cotton, and the man came up and just told them, your brother died. And she said her mother just couldn't understand what happened to him because he had been to Rich Square 3 weeks ago. And she said he came and her mother was cooking. He had come from Surrey County. Her mother was cooking and he was tired. And her mother asked him, she said, John, why are you working so hard? And he told her, and I quote, this is what Aunt Willie said. He told her mother, Mary, I want every colored child to be able to get an education. And she said he just went to sleep and didn't even eat. She said in the morning when he got up, he gave her a penny and he rode away back to Surrey County or to make a speech. She said she doesn't know where he went. And then she said 3 weeks later, they're told that he's dead. And she said, we don't know what happened because 3 weeks ago he was fine. So she said, can you do the research and find out what happened to my uncle? And she said, for 60 years I've been asking to get this research done. So I'm saying to myself, how can you tell someone 105, no, I can't do this? And I thought when she asked me to come to Philly, I thought she wanted me to go buy her something of that sort. To do research and write a book, I had just not too long ago come off two theses and one dissertation, and I know what research involves. Raleigh. So I said, I guess the first place I need to start is Surrey County, because, you know, this is where she said the school was. So that's when I got in contact with Reverend Harrison. And he just helped me so much. Everyone in Surrey County helped me so much. They opened their hearts, their homes, and gave me information. I was telling Reverend Harrison's wife this morning, I told her she has a lovely home. She wasn't there when I came there, but I came there because Reverend Harrison gave me information. I met one of his daughters, and I think his son at the time. It was just so much information that the people in Surrey County were so forthcoming with the information. It was as if they were just so happy that this had happened. So I did get a copy of the Monthly Advocate, which was Dr. Smallwood's newspaper on his campus. So I had sent it away for it from the Surrey County Historical Society, which Reverend Harrison was president at the time. The paper comes, and it's a like 5-6 page paper, long paper. And so, you know, I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this. This is just too much work. And then I read that Mrs. Eva Gregory from Surrey County, she had done some research on Dr. Smallwood, and she had mentioned that he was the grandson of Nat Turner. And I was like, this is too much. This will be too much for me. So I went into the kitchen, and I picked up the phone, and I was going to call to Philadelphia, and I was going to break Aunt Willie's heart. I was going to tell her, I can't do this, Aunt Willie. But before, and this is the truth, and I was dialing, I think it was what, I forgot, it was 252 for Philadelphia, and I looked down at that newspaper, and there, on that spreadsheet, was 5 little words, and it said, the Negro should be the historian of his own race. And it was as if Uncle John was talking to me. And I was like, no, Uncle John, don't do this to me. I don't want it. This is too much. He went on to say, no one can tell your story better than you can. And I can remember my sister telling me that once when I was doing some groups with some kids who were at risk at a high school. And it was a tough job. And I came home one day and I told my sister, I had written a grant to have a program after school for these girls, these troubled girls. And I told my sister, I said, I can't do this. They worked me too hard. They cursed at me. They did all this to me. And I wrote this grant to help them. And my sister told me, she said, but if you don't do it, who will? And then she said, what if Dr. King had decided that? And she knows that Dr. King is my heart, so she knew if she said Dr. King, then she would get me going. But she did say, if you don't do it, who will? So then I thought about this book when Uncle John said, the Negro needs to be the historian of his own race. So if I don't do it, who will? And it's not like I wasn't qualified. I had done research, and I enjoyed research. So I could do this. So I put down the phone, and I rolled up my sleeves, as my mom would say, and I dug in. And I am so happy today that I did. Because had I not, I would have never known about Dr. John Jefferson Smallwood. It has been, as I said, so my next stop was to go to Hampton University. I went to Hampton. I rode down one morning, went to the archives with a little pen and a little piece of paper, went in, and the girls said, I can't say this so much, I can't say this over and over again, but everyone was so forthcoming. I went into the archive, and there were 2 young ladies there. I walked in, they took my book bag, I took my pocketbook, and they gave me a pair of gloves. And I had a little pen, they took my pen, they gave me a pencil. And I told them that I had called them prior to come in and told them that I would, come in to see John Jefferson Smallwood and make sure they had some information on him, which they told me they did. They come from that back room with 2 boxes. Yes. And I was like, and I had a little sticky notes. And I was like, there's no way. So I told those girls, I said, well, I'll be here all day. I have to come back here.
so I just told them, Xerox everything that's in here. And they were like, are you sure? And I said, yeah. And so they did. So that December, a week or two before Christmas, an invoice comes in the mail. Yes. And I was like, oh my goodness. But I sent the check, and they sent me the paperwork. And so it was very rewarding. And so it was a 5-page letter in there, which I have included some parts of it in the book. The Dr. Smallwood, again, it was kind of hard for me to believe that I had a great-great-uncle. I'm not going to say that I don't think it runs in my family, but it was hard to believe that I had a great-great-uncle who had done so much. So what I did was I kind of dissected that whole 5-page letter. I started out, and it was as if Uncle John left that letter there thinking that one day some little busybody is going to come through and just take his work and just run with it, because it was as if he just left everything right there. So what I did was, as I said, I dissected his whole letter. He said he had gone to the Butler School. I never heard of the Butler School, but the Butler School now is Hampton University. And the girls there even had a little index card in the archives with John Jefferson Smallwood, 1870. And I was saying, wow, Uncle John, you were born 1863. And you left Rich Square, came all the way to Hampton, no mother, no father, because his parents had been sold away. And who cared for you? You were like 6, 7 years old. So the girls even in the archives have a picture of that first class that was at the Butler School. But if you know about the Butler School was named after Benjamin Butler. He was commander of the Union Army during President Lincoln's administration. And when Abraham Lincoln was thinking about freeing the slaves, Benjamin Butler went to President Lincoln and asked him, or wrote to him, and he inquired from him, if we free the slaves, what are we going to do with the millions of children who parents are been sold away? What are we going to do with all these little ex-slave children? So Benjamin Butler wanted to start a school to educate these ex-slaves, children of the ex-slaves. So that's how the Butler School came into being. Uncle John went on in his 5-page letter, and he highlighted that he went to the Butler School in 1870. His former master, Marcus W. Smallwood, died, who had paid for him to come to the Butler School, and he had to go back home to Ridge Square. So he went back home to Ridge Square, and he ran away. He was about 7, 8 years old. He said he ran away, and he was beaten, severely beaten, and brought back to the plantation. Now understand now, slavery was supposedly over in 1870. But what Dr. Smallwood said in his speeches, he said that if you think slavery was bad, after slavery was worse. He said it was worse on all levels. So then he also talked about how they instituted in North Carolina, I don't know about in other states, but in North Carolina where he lived, they came with a code, 2112 code, that you were still bound to your master until you were 18 years old. Well, Uncle John, being about 10 years old, took that to court. 10 years old. He lost. Because he didn't feel that if slavery is over, why do you have something on the books, a law, that says you are bound board, meaning you're bound to your master till you're 21. That was another form of slavery. As you read from Charles Blackman's book, Slavery by Another Name. It was another form of slavery. So Uncle John ran away again. And apparently he had heard something about his family being in Franklin, Virginia. Because every time he ran to Franklin, Virginia. So then the next paragraph in his letter, he talks about his grandfather. He said he was a great man. My grandfather, Nat Turner. Well, that took me on a whole together different spin here. Because everything that he wrote, I wanted to validate. When he said he went to Shaw University, I was over at Shaw University. When he said he went to the Butler School, I was at Hampton University. This is a scholarly book, well documented. I wanted to make sure I could stand behind every single thing I put in here and everything Dr. Smallwood wrote. So what I did was, with the Nat Turner piece, I had the opportunity to call Mr. Turner, Bruce Turner, who's here today, and I met with him in Southampton County. Now, I had started to read a lot about Nat Turner, because I'm telling a story now. And Uncle John left that kid. He just left 3 little sentences about everything. So it's my job to validate what he has said. So I met with Mr. Turner in Southampton County. He was gracious enough to meet with me one Saturday morning. And we met for, I guess we met like 9 o'clock until about 12. So I asked Mr. Turner, had he heard, because the historians all had said that Nat Turner's daughter was sold south, and his other children stayed locally. So I wanted to ask Mr. Turner, did he know anything about Nat Turner's oldest daughter? And he didn't have any evidence written down, any information written down, documented, but he did tell me, he said, I do remember someone throughout his lineage telling him that Nat Turner had an older sister. So, okay, that helped a lot, but I still got to pull everything together, because that's just who I am. I have to pull everything together. So as I called and called and called, I read into an article. I read a lot, and I read into an article where it mentioned Nat Turner's grandchildren. So it was in the Journal of the Negro Education in 1932. So then I needed to find that article. So I called around from university to university to university, and luckily, I called to A&T State University in Greensboro, and the guy who worked in the archives said, yes, I have that article. Now, I know, I was like, oh, thank you. I went outside, it was raining, I was at work, and he said, I can fax it to you, I can email it to you. I said, no. I said, you can do both, but I'm coming to Greensboro. I'm coming to A&T today. And besides, I wanted to meet him. You know, I wanted to give him something in appreciation, because he didn't have to do that. When I got that article, in the article, it said that her name, Nat Turner's daughter, name was May Liza. My mama is Mary Liza, and guess what? They call her May Liza. Her grandmother's name was Mary Eliza. They call her May Liza. And then I'm looking for a connection here. Then it said that she had 8 children that she was sold away from. Apparently she had been sold from the plantation when she was about 10 or 11. Then she may have been sold somewhere else in Virginia. But then she was sold from Southampton County into Northampton County, which is right adjacent to Southampton County. She left behind 8 children. 8 children, they list the name of those 8 grandchildren. One's name was John Washington, Mary Eliza, Thomas, and when she came to, apparently she lost, those kids were sold away. When she came to Northampton County, she was purchased by a Martha Smallwood. She started to have new children, and she named those children John Jefferson, Mary Eliza. How coincidental, and Thomas, how coincidental is that? And then when you read about slave stories, people will often tell you, and even today, if a mother loses a child, oftentimes if she gives birth to another child, she may be inclined to name that child by the child's same name that she had the other children. So this is what Mary Eliza did, or May Eliza, whichever you want to call. When she lost her other 8 children, she moved to Northampton County, still a slave, started to have her own children. So, and then with Aunt Willie now, being 107, she's still living. I walk in and Aunt Willie's on Good Morning America, because she was the oldest person in Philadelphia, and she's sitting back just chilling, talking about her uncle, Dr.John Jefferson Smallwood, and I'm in the dusty archives trying to get information. But she's really promoting the story because she's telling the story on TV. So then, after I got all that done, and that took me in a different direction, someone told me when I come to Surrey County, and when I was doing research, someone told me, put a hand out, I think, in his school, I think Marcus Garvey bought his school. So then, it took me in another direction. I have to verify that Uncle John didn't have that in his letter, because he wouldn't have known, because he died in 1912, who purchased his school. So that took me in another direction. So I called around. First, of course, I started in New York, because that's what Marcus Garvey's headquarters had been at that time. They didn't have any information. And after calling around to several universities, I was able to find it at Duke University. So which helped Duke University, Durham, Raleigh, all in the same area. I didn't have to get on the train. So I went over to Duke, and I spent 3 days over there putting information together. And I had put it in the book. Marcus Garvey did, in fact, purchase his school in 1926. So it was a lot of work. And doing the research, and there was Aunt Willie there that I could always call on. But, one time I spoke in Surrey County, and there was this guy, there was one guy whose mom had named him after John Jefferson. I don't know what his last name was, but he said his name was John Jefferson, and he was named after Dr. Smallwood. But having been in Surrey County and moving around through Surrey County, it was very interesting how much the people in Surrey County, how little they knew about Dr. Smallwood, but how much they cared about Dr. Smallwood and the work he had done. Oftentimes people would tell me, my great-great-grandmother went to his school. And it was just so amazing that one time, Dr. Smallwood, as I said, he left all his information, and there was a letter he left about finding his mother. And I'm not going to tell you where he found his mother, but it was just interesting. He was 26 years old when he found his mother. And one time I was in Surrey County, and this man asked me, he said, do you think Dr. Smallwood could have been Job? Could have been, because, and I understand what he meant, because what he was saying was Dr. Smallwood had so many obstacles in his life. It was like every time he put one foot forward, he had to go back 3, 4. And I understood what he meant. Another man asked me, he said, do you think Dr. King studied Dr. Smallwood? And I told him, I said, and I knew where he was coming from with that, because Dr. Smallwood, in one of his letters he had written, he traveled throughout the United States and abroad. He had written one letter and asking for money. He was always asking, people to make donations to his school, which he started the school in 1892. And he used the money. I understand he was a phenomenal speaker. Some people in the different newspapers said he was comparable to the Honorable Frederick Douglass. And within time, he was going to surpass Frederick Douglass. And Dr. Smallwood had won, he spoke over in England a lot. He spoke 7 languages. He was fluent in 7 languages. He received his PhD from Oxford University. He went to Charlotte University undergrad. He went to a school in Germany. He went to Trinity College in England. He was just, all before he was 26 years old. He did this all before he was 26 years old. And one night he was in dinner up north at the president of the university. He also went to Westland Academy. And Uncle John, the lady at the table, his guest, asked him, why are you so down? You should be so happy. You're doing so well. And he told him, he said, for 26 years I lived in this world without a family. I've never seen my mom, I've never seen my dad. He was sold from his mother when he was 5 months old. And so he said, if I could only find my mother. So everyone, his friends, as he called them, his northern friends, got together and raised money for him to help find his mother. And as he started that journey and he wrote about it, it was like, wow, I probably would have just given up. I would have given up. And his mother had been sold to maybe like 15 different slave slavers. And it was the last slave trader whom they had to pay $100 to him just to tell them where they had sold his mother. And so in his letter, Finding My Mother, he tells how his mother's condition was when he found her. And he did say, and this was another leap, and I go back to my grandfather, because when I asked my grandfather as a little girl, tell me about your grandmother, who Dr. Smallwood says was Nat Turner's daughter. When I asked my grandfather, tell me about your grandmother, and granddaddy, who was born in 1897, maybe in his 70s, then had salt and pepper hair, and he told me a story about how his grandmother, one day he was doing something he shouldn't have been doing, and she had lost her sight. And she told him, this is after Dr. John had brought her back to North Carolina. She told him, she said, tonight you're going to get a spanking. Yeah, I was looking at Granddaddy and I was like, who spanks Granddaddy? I'm looking at him like a little girl. So he said, so what he did that night before he went to bed, he said he put some pillows under the cover and he got under the bed. So when his grandmother came in, he said she beat those pillows to death. And every time she hit those pillows, he would holler from under the bed. And then she realized what he was doing. He said she reached under that bed, pulled him from under that, and he said she wore me out. And Granddaddy laughed every time he told that story, but I was looking at him like, Granddaddy, who beats Granddaddy? Who beats a Granddaddy? But what I'm saying, especially to young people, when I say, listen to your grandparents, because you see how that connection, when Dr. Smallwood connected it to when he met his mother, he said she was blind. She had lost her sight. So because I'm still trying to find every lead that I can, because I'm telling you, it was like, I'm Dr. Smallwood's great-great-niece. He's the grandson of Nat Turner. It's not something, you just don't, you're not something you just want to make up. It's just like, is this real? So I wanted to make sure everything, all the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. Well, the good part of this, as I told my mom, when you read the story about Dr. Smallwood, I guess you can liken it to Job, because it was like, Mom, I told Mom, why would a person who wanted to help people, he often said in his writings, there were times he didn't even have $1. All the money, that almost $7,000 he got when he spoke over in England, he took that $7,000 and bought that land on the James River for that school. Mama, who really does that? When I heard Aunt Willie say, her mother said, John, why are you working so hard? And he said, I want every colored child to be able to get a good education. But he had it so hard. And then I told Mom, to understand what happened to him at 49 years old. It's just, and my mom, she says, but God has a purpose for everybody. And that was his purpose. And after he did what God wanted him to do, then God decided to take him home. And that's why I entitled the book Divine Will, because if you read about Dr. Smallwood, it's a special type of person who does that. And back to the man who asked the question in Surrey County when he asked me, do you think Dr. Smallwood and Dr. Smallwood studied each other? Dr. King studied Dr. Smallwood. And the reason being because Dr. Smallwood, in one of his letters he wrote asking for money, he stated that basically that the Negro should not be judged by the color of his skin, but by his character. Isn't that familiar? So that's why that guy asked me that question. And I told him, I said, well, I don't know. This is what I said. I said, Dr. King was in Boston, Dr. Smallwood was in Boston. Maybe, but then I told him, I said, I think sometimes great minds think alike. And I think there's a divine will that, Dr. Smallwood lived during a different era. He tried to bring about change, and Dr. King lived during another era and tried to bring about change. Dr. Smallwood died at 49 and Dr. King at 39. So I think, and this is what my mom was trying to explain to me, that, God has his own purpose for everyone. Because there were times when I was doing the research and reading, and the opposition he faced, not just with white Americans, but black Americans too. I did have the opportunity to go visit Dr. Smallwood's home site. As Reverend Harrison said, you can pass by it, and he took me a tour of it. But I did get a chance to speak with the son of the owner, deceased owner. I understand now he's now deceased, the man who purchased the property. His son, we talked, and he invited me to come down and to take a tour. And as we toured the property, I had a chance to go into Uncle John's house that he lived in, and it was bittersweet, I must admit, because as I stood on those hardwood floors, and Uncle John built this house himself, I stood on these hardwood floors, and I said to myself, wow, this could have been a university that had educated thousands and thousands of kids. And then I went into Uncle John's study, and I looked out the window, and you could see where his school building was, and where he could sit in his study and do what he did, and then look at his building, his school building. I commended Roger, he's the son of the owner of the property, because they have kept the buildings in really good shape. Dr. Smallwood's plow is still there, his shed is still there, most of the buildings are still there. They have done a good job renovating the buildings. And he did, having read the book, ask me the question, why were so many people opposed to what he was doing? Dr. Smallwood, a little bit about history, around that time, Booker T. Washington had started the Tuskegee Industrial Institute in Alabama. And it was an industrial school. Uncle John wanted to do, and his school was initially called the Temperance Industrial and Collegiate Institute. And Booker T questioned Dr. Smallwood as to why would you have a collegiate part to your school? Why are you teaching Latin? Why are you teaching people to be teachers and to become doctors and lawyers? And, what are they going to do? In a sense, speak Latin to the chickens? And Dr. Smallwood felt that the Negro has the ability to do more. He could do it all. Dr. Smallwood had an industrial place. He had a mattress factory. He had a sawmill on his campus. He bought 271 acres of land surrounding the university, which sat on 65 acres off the James River. But he wanted to teach the young men and women how to build their own houses. He wanted so much for his children meaning not his biological children, but for everybody's child. And he worked so hard for that to happen. But his health steadily declined. And I'm sure most of you have read the book, or you've heard, he brought electricity to the town of Claremont. He was the first one to erect a building, the first Negro to erect a building on American soil that gave honor to a president, President Lincoln, which he named Lincoln Hall. Dr. Smallwood also, in buying the 65 acres on the James River, what was really heartwarming for me was that one of the buildings he built that came with the property, the 65 acres, one of the buildings was called Bagley Hall. Bagley Hall was the building where slaves came over. They would go to this Bagley Hall, but it was a building. They would come to this, they would bring them off the ship and bring them into Bagley Hall, but Bagley Hall was known as the Negro Pen. And what the Negro Pen, what it does is when slaves come off the ship, you go into this building, they hold you down because you've heard and probably read that the slaves, the black people, not slaves, but the black people, stayed on the ships for months and months. So they would hose them down, water them down, and then send them to different places to be auctioned off. Well, many years later, Dr. Smallwood comes by and he buys the same building, the land with the buildings, and he turns that building that used to be Negro Pen into a dormitory for males to educate African American males, or Negro males at that time. Dr. Smallwood, by 1904, had traveled over 20,000 miles making speeches. And it was one, after I came to the end of the book, finished the book, I was saying, because, people always talk, everything I read, he was just an awesome speaker, he was phenomenal. Whenever he would go speak, they would have to change the venue because so many people would want to come here and speak. And I said to myself, boy, I certainly wish I could hear some of his speeches. Of course, I wish I could hear his voice. But I said, I would just be satisfied with hearing some of his speeches. And then, and this is a true story, one night, I get a ping on my phone. And, turn over, look at it, and it's a Facebook. Someone had sent me, someone named Stella Rhonda. And she had a face like Betty Bob, when the Flintstones were one of those characters. She didn't have a real face. And I looked through, I scrolled down, and it was like 10 of his speeches. So I said, I'm dreaming, So I get up and I go into my study room, I go to my laptop, because now, I was on my phone. I go to my laptop, and I saw someone had sent me his speeches. So then I downloaded, and thank God, went to bed, woke up, and I was dreaming. There were the speeches right there. So with his speeches, I was able to come up with the second book, which is a collection of his speeches. And then I was saying, as I was just, and this book is verbatim his speeches, everything he wrote. And then, as I said, he traveled over 20,000 miles by 1904. And we're not talking about that car. We're not talking about bus and train. We're talking about horse and buggy. And then when I finished, when I was going through his speeches, I said to myself, all this I was running around about Nat Turner, but in his speech when he spoke in Wisconsin, New York, and then they said he left and he traveled to the Dakotas, Uncle John just pretty much spelled it out right here in his speech. He said where he was born. He said he's about his mother. He was the 15th of 16 children, 9 sons and 7 daughters, born to Mary Eliza Smallwood, a slave, and the daughter of Nat Turner, and to David Jefferson Smallwood, also a slave. And Uncle John just goes on when he's speaking, and he just tells everything. And I said, wow, I did all that running around, and then I found his speeches, and everything was laid out there. So it has been really amazing. So in closing, what I would like, and I have a little brochure here, that I list all of his accomplishments, and I didn't just want to go through and just name them all. I just want to tell you how I came to know Dr. Smallwood. And so, what was interesting, when I finished the first book, I went to Aunt Willie in Philadelphia. She's now about 111. Wow. Yes. And she had me running around. And when she was 105, as if she was going to die the next week. And she's 111 now. Wow. So, yeah. So I go to Aunt Willie and I give her this book. Now, of course, she did go to Elizabeth City, so she could read, but her sight. She was losing her sight, so she didn't even try to read the book. Only thing she did was just look at the cover, and she saw his face, and she rubbed her hand on her face, and she said he was always a good-looking man. And she was like, I'm so proud. She said, now, ma'am, maybe now the Lord can take me on home now, because I've done what he asked me to do. In April of 2012, they brought her, I talked to her the night before, a couple of nights before, she had a slight stroke. Well, she tried to get up out of her bed, and she hit her head, and she was bleeding, and the doctors wanted her to go have some CAT scans and all that stuff, and she was like, no, if it bleeds, just let it bleed. I'm 111, almost 112, really. And so she had a slight stroke, and I told her, I said, well, Willie, I'm coming up to see you soon. And she said, well, wait until I get my hair dressed before you come. And I said, okay. But as the story goes, she sat in her chair and the girls brought her dinner. She ate some of it, and on Easter Monday, she transitioned home. And on her nightstand was her book of her Uncle John. So that was very rewarding for me. And equally rewarding for me is the fact that, Dr. Smallwood really tried to do his best to educate his children. And one thing that he wanted, he left in his will, he wanted the people to have, in Virginia, to have first choice in getting into his school. Because he put the school here in Virginia to educate colored children. And he emphasized, he did not just want them to get an education. He said, I want them to get a good education. So that is a little bit about the Uncle John I know, aka Dr. John Jefferson Smallwood. If there are any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer the questions. As I said, I didn't want to just bore you. I hope I didn't bore you, but I didn't want to just go through his accomplishments because there's so many things that he did. But I just wanted to tell you a story about the man and how he came into being. So, are there any questions?
I do have one. It's very difficult to get onto that property. Very difficult. So I commend you for getting onto that property. Is Bagby Hall still standing?
Well, yes it is. You would not recognize it as Bagby Hall anymore because, as I said, they've done a good job of renovating the buildings. But yes, yeah, Roger told me they kept all the buildings there, even the shed where he kept his horse and his carriage. And we had a chance to go, my sister and I, we went down, we had a chance to go in the shed, and as I said, the plow was still there, and I kind of wanted the plow. He had decorated the plow red, white. I just wanted, so what I did was I wanted something, so I did go to the black oak tree where he was buried, overlooking the James River, and the tree had a bark there, so I did pick a piece of bark off, so I have that in my living room. But it is bittersweet to see that, this is something that he worked so hard to acquire, and it just kind of got away. And that's what Dr. Smallwood, when he was falling ill, he kept saying if he could have someone to take it over, but someone would have to work hard to keep it together, but no one really stepped forward. So how the story goes, after he died, it went through so many different mergers, just so many. It was kind of hard for me to keep track of it with so many. And then, of course, when Marcus Garvey purchased it in 1926, and then the Great Depression, 1928, it just kind of, and then Marcus Garvey was in jail, in prison in Atlanta. So it just fell apart. And, but if you were to go on, and it was, I do appreciate Roger. We went into Lincoln Hall, which is, renovated into a home, a mansion. And my sister and I, we had dinner there. Well, lunch was actually lunch. And, it was nice that they kept it all up, but it's still bittersweet because, it's like, it's Uncle John, but anyway, but yes, they're all there. Yes.
So what's the primary purpose of the property now?
It's private. It's owned by, it was purchased, I think it was in 1930 something. A couple out in New Jersey purchased the property, and because after Marcus Garvey, it just sat and sat and sat. Nothing was ever done to it, and it kind of just withered away. The buildings just kind of, needed some work done. And this couple, husband and wife from New Jersey, purchased it, so they purchased it, and then the son, who invited me to come, he and his siblings own it now, because the father and mother are both deceased, so he owns it now.
White? They're white or black?
They're white. They're white. Yeah. Yes.
What year was it? Do you remember?
When I met you, it probably was like 2005, 2006, 2007, something like that.
I was in Surrey, and to go to the book signing. And Then I saw all these people come in from North Carolina, people that I knew. And I'm thinking to myself, what are they doing here? Manola.
Manola Road.
A place like that. What are they doing here? And so, come to find out, I got the book. And then I started asking questions and realized she's a cousin to one of my very best friends. I mean, very best friend. I almost had a stroke up in there. Because it was such a wonderful connection. And so when she came in today and I was saying, I have the book, but I didn't put it, it'd been such a while that I didn't remember quite the connection. So today, I mean, to listen to how you put this thing together and then to be sitting here in front of this man, it's been an awesome journey. You had an awesome journey, and I commend you for hanging in there.
Thank you.
I really do, and I thank you, and I look forward to getting your other book.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
Are there any other questions? And oftentimes when I speak, especially when the books first came out, I used to speak a lot, here, and when I hear in Surrey County, as well as Roanoke Rapids, which is North Carolina, and in Ridgeway. And I tell the young people, particularly, one thing I tell them too, and I see two very young boys sitting there now, is to, when your grandparents or your parents are talking, particularly your grandparents, listen to what they have to say. Listen. I know sometimes, they may not know how to use the computers, they may not have to do Instagram. They don't know a lot of things. I see the grandfather touching his son there. They don't know how to do a lot of things that you know how to do. But one thing that they have that you don't have yet is wisdom. And you listen to them because, when I was your age, I asked questions. I listened to my grandparents. And that is what helped me at my age now, put all of this together. And another thing with me was when I said, I don't know if I want to do this, but then when I thought about it, and I said, when Uncle John left, you should be the historian of your own race. I tell young people, the reason I could do it and had fun doing it is because I had prepared myself to do it. I had, as I said, I had gotten 2 masters, which I did a thesis, and I did a doctorate, PhD, which I did a dissertation. So I knew well how to do research. I knew how to write a scholarly book. So you may not know it right now when you're in school and the teacher, I was in a classroom one day last week and the teacher was there and she was teaching Japanese too, to her students. And some kids in there that one didn't want to listen, but they don't realize that one day you will need this. You never know where your path will take you in life. And, and when I read about Uncle John and having spoken 7 languages, and I said to myself, what happened? Because I measured myself by him in a sense. Here this man was born a slave. Didn't have a mother or father. He never saw his father. But he saw his mother. He got his mother when she was 20 and he was 26. And this guy had already finished school, spoke 7 languages fluently. And I measured myself by him. And I said, wow, if I could only, when I took French in school, yeah, I know, I'm like you, yeah, I took French 1, 2, and 3. Yeah, seriously. And when they had a Latin class there, and all the kids were saying, what do I need to learn Latin for? When do I ever use Latin? And I saw that Friday with this class, the Japanese class, and the kids in there just not taking advantage of it. But I say to you all young people, take advantage of it. Learn as much as you can because it will come handy one day. Okay?
His date of birth and his date of death, do you have those?
Dr. Smallwood was born 1863, and he died 1912.
You know the exact date?
The exact date is, I have to look at his monument. His monument was moved from his school to when he died, when they purchased the building. His monument was moved, and it's moved to another church, I think in Cabin Point, somewhere like that. But is that correct? Cabin Point. But what did you It's on my little pamphlet here. He was born September 19, 1863, and he died September 29th, 1912. And he was married, and he had 3 children, 2 of whom were stillborn, and one lived, I understand, to reach, I guess I don't know how she did survive. The other 2 died in infancy. But according to Aunt Willie, I asked her about his daughter, because she and Aunt Willie was born 1900, his daughter was born 1901, and Aunt Willie said that she never met his daughter, and obviously she ever met his wife, but she knew that it was something wasn't quite right with his daughter. I don't know if she had some kind of birth defect. I took it that she had some kind of birth defect. So therefore, no children were ever born out of that union. So that ended when, he didn't have anyone to carry on or do the research. So, Aunt Willie asked me to do it, and so I did. And I'm glad I did. It made her happy. And I'm glad, because I would have never known about Dr. Smallwood. And also, I did have opportunity to have a highway marker put out there. I think it's on U.S. Colonial Trail. Yeah, I had a marker to be put. A couple in Philadelphia sponsored it because he had gone to one of the schools that Uncle John had gone to. So it was really interesting. I got a chance to meet a lot of people. Like I said, I got a chance to meet Mr. Turner. And it was just really nice. And the people in Surrey County, Reverend Harrison, it was just phenomenal. I just can't, everybody was just so forthcoming and was so willing to send information. And like I said, Uncle John left the roadmap, and it was so easy to do. Any other questions? Because I could talk all day about Dr. Smallwood. Because I'm so proud of him. I really am. Any other questions? Okay, like I said, Reverend Harrison said, I do have some books on the back. They're probably slash half price. If you were to get them on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, they're going to get the full price for you, pay full price for it. But, I'm slashing the prices if you want to get a copy of the book. And I really appreciate being invited again. I always enjoy coming to Surrey County, and particularly meet the people and speaking about Uncle John. Okay? Thank you.
Dr.John Jefferson Smallwood. We just thank you. As you can see from her presentation, with God, all things are possible. She talked about his lack of resources, and so we know that with God, all things are possible. And we also know that those who will truly be great among us must be what? Servants among us. A couple of things that you mentioned, Dr. Vinson, has suggested is that young people need to ask grandparents about their history. And grandparents, when they don't ask, grandparents need to share their history. And I had an experience just a few months ago where even my daughters and some of the grandchildren were asking me certain things about my husband's background. And I said, I thought they knew this, and then it dawned on me, how can they know unless we tell them? So I would challenge each of us to take that hint from Dr. Vinson and make sure that our grandchildren and the next generation know about not only the history of great African Americans, but our history and the legacy that we have. Dr. she said, the Negro should be the historian of his own race. The Negro should be the historian of his own race. So we need to pass on these historical events to each generation that follows us. So we thank you again.